I would like to introduce again my partner for 2 days of incredible events on generative AI and trustworthy AI here at the United Nations, Professor Philipp. He was the mastermind behind a lot of the events that you all are enjoying, and he's going to speak to you now about trustworthy AI.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sarah, and your co-leadership on all these events that we're having in the past and we're planning in the future, and also for this exciting talk. So on my end, once the presentation gets going, which I'm sure will happen in just a second, I will talk a little bit more beyond the financial sector on the social and legal implications of generative AI, trustworthy AI. So basically, just a little bit of my background. I'm educated as a lawyer, but I do work a lot, collaborate a lot with machine learners and mathematicians on questions of algorithmic fairness, non-discrimination, explainable AI. And I'm particularly intrigued by the questions of how generative AI and the legal system, regulation, and computer science kind of interact in this triangle. I also do a lot of policy work, so I'm currently advising the German Federal Chancellery, the German Parliament, and German ministries, and also the European Commission and the European Parliament on the AI Act. So I've been in this for the last year, which has been probably professionally the most exciting year of my career, because simply ChatGPT and all these generative AI systems picked up so heavily. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what I think we should do going forward. If you're interested in reading this more in depth, I have a couple of papers out there. One was recently just published by ACM Fact, which is fairness, accountability, transparency, probably leading venue for AI law and ethics in the world. You can find them all in archive. Just type in my name in archive. All right, so let's get started. I think that it would be really interesting, on the one hand, to talk about some research challenges, but also how they actually relate to the policy. So what's a major research challenge going forward? I guess it is all a matter of interdisciplinary. And I want to stress that it's important to bring research communities together in this case. Why? Well, generally, interdisciplinary research is difficult, but it's often interesting. In this case, I think we have different communities with different risks and different perspectives and perceptions. So, for example, I come from the legal community, and in the legal community, what people do a lot of times is they focus on the risks, because otherwise there is no reason for regulation, right? So there's talk about the main risk, the long-term risk, and so on and so on and so forth, and the discourse is really dominated by risks. Well, it's when I talk to the computer scientists, the economists, the people in the industry who are actually building and don't hold any of these models, it's a lot about the opportunities. And we've known from Aristotle that, the truth is often in the middle, the zotis. And I think that's true here as well, but it's important to get these communities together just to get that middle ground. So from there on, it's only a short track toward the policy discourse. And you'll know probably, or you might have heard, that the AI Act in the EU is currently under discussion. It's entering its final phase, and we will likely see a final version by around Christmas. And this will be the first comprehensive mechanism to regulate AI for any major economic bloc. And the important thing, however, that I want to stress, particularly here at the UN, is that it's not enough for Europe to put down minimum rules and thresholds and standards for AI. It's important to have a global conversation and to minimize the possibility of having what's called regulatory arbitrage. So companies can actually opt to go to other places outside of the EU to have easier conditions and then get their models rolled out worldwide. So if we are serious about confronting certain risks that AI poses, and at the same time bring forward the opportunities that it offers, we certainly have to work on some kind of global compact, global convention for AI. And what better place to talk about this than here at the UN? There has been an initiative that has been already started at the G7 levels of the G7 Hiroshima process. Maybe you've heard about it. It's an AI process whereby the G7 countries are now engaging in a dialogue about regulation, but I think it's important to bring this to the UN level to be even more inclusive, to have the Global South involved, to have China involved. So I think this is going to be really interesting to look forward to more discussions. And before I go to the next slide, can I ask people in the room, what do you think, if you had to nominate one real risk that you see, the most important risk that generative AI, things like ChatGPT, Midjourney, all these GPT-4 systems are proposing, what's the main risk that you see that you want addressed by regulation? Anybody? Yeah, please.
Bias.
Bias?
In training data sets.
Oh, bias in training data sets. That's excellent. Yeah, no. Larger scale, automated disinformation, basically. Yes.
Manipulation and inequality.
Oh, manipulation, and you mean quality of pictures and content?
I know, like a group of humans use AI to manipulate another.
Oh, okay. Manipulation of actors, both in market and non-market settings. Yes, that's right. Any other thoughts? Yes, in the back. You can just say it and I'll.
So basically, human beings.
So the robot turns against human beings. Okay, so it's basically a bit of the Terminator challenge, right? Okay, yeah, good. So that's a very decent collection that we have here. And I think what's a bit mind-boggling at the moment is that as a policymaker, you have to understand policymakers only have so much bandwidth, of course. They're dealing with so many things, and you have to make sure that you prioritize the right things that you want to tell them. And that's why I came up with some kind of an analytical framework in which I try to map out a little bit what the different challenges are. So you have challenges basically, here's a time horizon on the upper side, and short-term, medium-term, and long-term consequences. And then here, basically, you have the hierarchical level, the logical level on which it operates. Let's walk through an example. We have content moderation. Content moderation is the question of what kind of safeguards and railguards can be implemented in generative AI systems such that fake news, mass disinformation, hate speech does not proliferate, does not get automated by generative AI. So there is this is a short-term concern because I think it's really urgent. I think it's really one of the main concerns that we have for really stabilizing our democracies and countries. So here on the micro level, there's lots of tools that are being developed by AI developers to take care of that. They are imperfect, but still. And there is a regulatory approach that we'll talk about in a while. On the meso level, medium level, you can think about the whole framework. For example, the new AI Act that has some rules on this interacts with what's called the DSA. For all of those who are not so much into the EU policy discourse, this is the Digital Services Act that was enacted, that is already effective in the EU, and that seeks to tackle misinformation precisely on social networks, but that does not directly apply to generative AI, unfortunately. And then on the macro level, of course, we have to think very hard about the effects that these technologies will have, for better or worse, on democratic discourse and on the stability of our democracies. If we think about the potential, and experiments have already shown this, but the potential of automating fake news and hate speech and the upcoming election cycles, U.S. and other countries, they are going to be ugly anyways. This is certainly something we should be really worried about and take action right now. So I'm just going to, in the remaining minutes, walk you through just a little bit those three main examples from short, medium, and long-term risk strategies and different levels. So how do we do this? You've probably seen one of these pictures. So it's these fake pictures of the Pope on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you see an individual that probably most of you know that has a lot of problems with legal proceedings, including criminal proceedings, but they did not have a mugshot taken, despite the fact that he's been arraigned a couple of times. And despite the fact that I'm really, really tempted, I will not comment on these specific criminal proceedings. I have a certain hunch at how this is going. But this is a picture on the right-hand side of this gentleman that used to be U.S. president that was created actually for fundraising purposes, most likely, and then circulated on social media. So those are images that look very real, and as we all know, the problem is not only that it's difficult for us to distinguish true from fiction, but also there are no reliable AI detection tools, and they will get worse over time. And it's kind of an arms race, but the attacker in IT is always in a better position. And the friends that I have who are actually developing these systems, they tell me you go 2 or 3 years ahead, no chance you're going to discover, going to find out whether it's actually fake or not. If it's well done. In the past, you used to have, 7 fingers, something like that. That has disappeared. Faces you look super strange. Now they look pretty perfect. And it'll only get better. So basically, we have to say goodbye to the notion of authenticity in picture and videos. And I think we have to really take this seriously. There is no authenticity whatsoever in pictures and videos anymore, as of now. So what can we do? So I think this is, again, on the short and micro level, a concern that is pretty real, both on the individual and on the social scale. While this, you see this article from the Washington Post, and in fact, ChatGPT invented a sexual harassment claim against a Georgetown University professor. And that professor is having massive problems because when you Google that name, this will come up, and it's very, very hard to get rid of it. And it's all made up, It's just all a matter of hallucinating generative AI models. And for all that I love AI technology, and I think they have massive potential, this is a big problem we have to address. What can we do? So the EU has an imperfect answer for the Digital Services Act, which basically has mechanisms like notice and action mechanisms, trusted flaggers, basically democratizing or decentralizing moderation of content. And that does not apply now to generative AI systems. But my idea would be to say, you tempt this system to generative AI providers. So basically, if any one of you, or if, for example, registered entities like NGOs, consumer watchdogs, they find out that with this and that jailbreak prompt, actually, you can get, for example, the formula for a chemical bomb or a biological bomb. Or if you get, a nice dialogue between Hitler and government, which is prohibited in many countries, including Germany, where I come from, then you can send this a notice to OpenAI, for example, and they have to act quickly. They have to act with a full trusted flagger within a couple of days to take this down, to redesign the system such that prompt will not generate that response. If they can't do it, they have to take it off until they fix it. And so this is how the Digital Services Act works, and I think it's actually a good framework. Second point here is medium-term reason level. Here I want to talk just a little bit about algorithmic fairness. What is algorithmic fairness? It is an effort by the computer science community to address rampant non-discrimination and bias problems in AI. We all know that there have been such problems. And of course, particularly if training data is skewed, the problem is that the AI will learn this and will replicate the problems in the training data, will actually potentially exacerbate it and play it out worldwide. So what do we do? I work with computer scientists and mathematicians to address this. And we have a paper, for example, that came out in 2020 that developed a new algorithm for taking care for reducing, mitigating bias in AI systems. The way it works is you have different score distributions. It doesn't really matter what this is. This is actually a law school admissions test from the US. And those are different schools that are actually different ethnic origins. And it turns out there are 2 groups that are particularly good and bad. You can imagine which those groups are. And if you think that's all right, then you just keep it this way. If you think, however, that due to historical and social injustice, some groups are particularly disadvantaged, you can actually use our algorithm and you have a parameter theta, and you can approximate these group distributions, or you can actually make them match fully. The idea is that you use a special mathematical theory called optimal transport theory. You lose as little information as possible, but you still approximate these groups such that they have similar chance of being admitted. We all know that with the new Supreme Court ruling, this is illegal in the US now. In Europe, you can solve this to a good extent. In the US, they will have to think of new ways to do this. I'm not going to comment on that in detail. What I want to comment on is the fact that we have new challenges now with generative AI. Why? Well, in traditional algorithmic fairness, what we do is we have a raw score. We'll say, for this applicant, say it's a black woman, they usually get a score that's too low. So we map this via our optimal transport map to a fear score. Say it was 24, and now the better fear score would be 30. Now, think about this picture. That's a approach that I used nurse doctor on June 14 for Delhi 2. And if you have any experience in the medical context, and experts, please correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes it's in medical settings, it's rather the nurse or the subordinate person who's actually taking the notes. So there's actually something to be said that this is the doctor and this is a subordinate doctor of the nurse, which then again comes with these, gender problems. It is quite subtle. It is sometimes less subtle. I have just yesterday I queried 10 times GPT-4 by asking it to finish the sentence of "a doctor walks into the room and in 7 out of 10 cases, it used a male preposition, and you looked at the patient, blah, blah, blah. And in 3 cases, it looked at a female. We've been in touch, I've been talking with Dean Fishman, who's also in the audience here, about mechanisms to resolve this. Dean Fishman from Carnegie Mellon University, great to see you here. So there's a lot of research required to actually find out whether bias sits. But the problem is, you can't just take a number and say, I update the score from 20 to 30. Well, how does an inclusive picture look like? And even more, how does inclusive language look like? So we need a whole new array of tools and thinking. And there's a whole social debate behind it, of course, of what constitutes a fair and non-discriminatory output of generative AI model. Much more difficult, much more policy loaded also than in the numbers example. And I'm coming to my final slide almost. That's long-term. Long-term risk on the macro level. And of course, I have to just briefly mention the Terminator scenario, existential risk. And there are very smart people like Yoshio Bangyo, for example. You don't get the Turing Award for nothing, right? So he's a brilliant guy. He wrote up in a long blog post how actually in certain conditions, rogue AI could arise that could potentially pose the problem to humanity. However, this is clearly a non-zero possibility, but I would say it's not the biggest challenge that we're facing at this moment. Rather, we should focus on some other things that are, of direct concern right now. It's never too early to start thinking about it. And if there are things that we have to do now to prevent this later on from happening, I'm really happy to talk about this. But I'm missing kind of the input from industry leaders who flag this as a problem, but keep working on the models as if nothing happened, And it's similar to pandemic prevention, for example. It might be a new pandemic down the road, and we have to compare now. All right, so let's get started on thinking about what exactly we have to do. Which is talking about existential risk won't solve it. Well, we actually have a lot of problems that for sure will arise and really threaten social cohesion and our economic prosperity. A lot of jobs will be either displaced or augmented by generative AI. And whether they actually substituted by APIs or merely amended is a matter of ongoing discussion in the research community. What is clear is that we have to invest a lot in upskilling, which is a point that was also made by the inclusion in a recent paper. And we have to, of course, think very hard about what happens if a massive number of jobs in the mid-sector, for example, in the drafting stage, is being replaced by AI, for example, in the software industry, where I talked to a company in Berlin and they said, hiring freeze, and we're starting to lay off people, because Copilot Codex, they're just so good. So we have to think about this and what this does to our tax basis of our states. Because if suddenly a lot of workers are replaced by APIs, they don't pay taxes anymore, but they have to be taken care of by the social security system. And this might pose, massive problems. Those are the kind of problems that will really generate existential risk, but not for our planet, but rather for democracies and social cohesion. And if there's one more existential risk we should be talking about, it's certainly climate change, because AI, has potential to mitigate climate change, but at the same time, it's also contributing to it due to the immense water and electricity usage. And I have a paper out on this called Sustainable AI Regulation Archive that you're welcome to have a look at. So I'm wrapping up by just saying that we need to continue the conversation. That's why, together with Sarah, who had to run up to another meeting here, I'm happy to introduce a new platform that we're launching to facilitate this discussion. It's going to be called the International Expert Consortium on the Regulation, Economics, and Computer Science of AI, short REX AI. You'll be hearing more from us On this, I'm going to be co-leading it with Sarah Hammer, and I'm looking forward to involving you in the conversation and gathering more opinions on this and facilitating discussion at an international level on questions of international compacts, international consensus, policymakers, and researchers, because I think those are really one of the main challenges we're facing on the world stage. And so it's great to have your input. Thanks so much for listening. I don't know if we have time to take one or two questions. Yeah, that'd be great.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, the main stage will be starting now. If you make your way to the auditorium,
yeah.
Thank you.
If you want to stay on for 1-2 minutes or 3, you're most welcome. We're going to open the floor to discussions. You have a question over there, gentlemen? Maybe introduce yourself real quick.
Fascinating stuff. There's much more nuance. But there are also nuances within industry and in specific areas. For example, radiology it's going to be made, but we feel that there is other specialisms where it would be the opposite. So we need to be more specific ways to integrate more, rather than saying it's more like you name
Yeah, that's a great point. It calls for more nuance in terms of disciplines and seeing, where do we actually have male bias, where do we have female bias, where do we have other types of biases against other populations. And certainly we'll have to be very granular on these models. They can be very granular. The good thing is you can actually say that, these disciplines we need to go more to this section, these disciplines we need to go more to another mitigations. Other thoughts or questions?
First of all, thank you very much for the super insightful lecture. My name is Paolo. I work for the solar governance, or data governance, and AI governance, so mostly on these EU files that you have mentioned previously. I was wondering, what's your view on the recently launched AI Verify tool and AI Verify Foundation in Singapore? Because at least to us, it seems like they are one of the front runners on AI governance.
That's a great question. I haven't looked at the tool particularly well to be able to comment on it in depth. I can say that initiatives such as these that actually look at AI governance from a partially local and then also international perspective are super important. And verification, both of AI content in the sense of, is this AI generated or not? And then perhaps even more importantly, verification of the content. This is something that we have to look at. So for example, the company is based in Germany, one of the very few players in the EU that are actually generating top-notch generative AI systems, Alpha. They have a model out, it's called Luminous, in which they can basically track where a certain answer comes from in the training data or also in the prompt. And that is something that we increasingly need to see because oftentimes you get answers and just don't know if it's hallucination or not. So verification in the sense of making sure that we have a solid basis on facts and making sure that we can see where we have problems. And this in an automated way, I think this is one of the main instruments for tackling misinformation online. Thank you. Great question. Other thoughts? One final question. Thank you.
So I have a for example, one of the things that we didn't discuss about is data ownership and intellectual property. What's the current status? I don't know.
Do you have 2 hours? Data ownership. We have the Data Act in the EU, which there is no real data ownership. There is data protection law. And there are certain rights to access your data under both data protection law and putting up in the AI Act and share it with third parties. I think that absolutely makes sense to incentivize consumers, but not only consumers, also business enterprises to have access to data that was generated by their behavior and to push this onto different systems such that we don't become locked in systems that are generating and keeping data and then building services on top of them. There's similarly a lot of stuff in the DNA and Digital Markets Act that allows you to access data if you're even a competitor, for example, search engine and to want to build your own tools. So I think this is really important. Whether it's really going to work, I'm more skeptic because, we've seen the data portability rights that have been around in the GDPR, for example, Article 21 for ages, and people are using it. It's a different case for businesses. So now we have the right for businesses, and that might actually generate new market opportunities in intermediary services, really switching from one provider to the other or building your own models, which many businesses have an interest in rather than keeping it with the provider. On the second point, so data ownership and intellectual property. Well, I only have a couple minutes. So intellectual property, long story short, I think here's going to be one of the main questions for distributing the economic benefits of generative AI. You probably know that there's this Getty case in the US for stability, and I'm meeting Björn, the inventor of stability, tomorrow. He's a great guy, but his company has just been sued for $1.8 trillion. That's not a small sum. Nonetheless, our current doctrines get us pretty far. In the US, the fair use, and the EU, we have a specific text data mining exception. One of the main problems is that we don't have legal certainty at the moment, and we have another problem with the fact that in the EU, for example, when we do have these exceptions, we found for all commercial applications, so those are the ones we're talking about primarily, there is a veto right, let's say, of artists, content creators. But there's no way in which this veto right has been standardized. So the problem is, if you got a 20 million pieces data set, trying to scramble through these 20 million pictures to see if that person somewhere in the captions or wherever would, exercise their veto right. No way to do this. So this is a major concern at the moment. Whilst at the same time, we need to ensure that, artists are not massively put out of work by engines that have been trained on their very pieces of art. So here, I'd be a little more conservative on the innovation front. I think if you train on somebody's work and then use it to replace that person, I think there should be some legal barriers to this. Probably some compensation mechanisms. You could use collective agencies like we have in in the picture sector, or also concerning all kinds of written text that already exist in the member states to compare. So that's a long story short. I think this is a massive conversation going forward also for lawyers. Thanks so much. I think we have to clear the stage for the next presentation. Thanks to all of you for showing up. Have a great day. Have a great